What motivations sustain Bruce Wayne? What has his career as Batman done to his psyche, his brain, and his body? I will give an evaluation of the physiology, psychology, kinesiology, and neuroscience of Batman and discuss the physical and psychological realities of becoming and then having a career as Gotham's Dark Knight. Batman has risen and fallen and risen again many times since his debut in Detective Comics number 27 in May of 1939. Batman exists in a grim reality, and a big part of that reality is the physical toll on the human playing the part of superhero. That toll is inflicted repeatedly by the bad guys he faces, and none has been front and center for the repeated toll like the Joker. The Joker, a creation of Jerry Robinson, Bob Kane, and Bill Finger, debuted in Batman number 1 in 1940. This criminal mastermind immediately became Batman's true nemesis. Since then, the Joker has been clearly represented as evil incarnate in the comic books and movies. He's been difficult for Batman to handle each and every time, despite the fact that Batman is strong, powerful, and trained, and Joker, well, doesn't look like any of that. Heath Ledger's Joker is a true anarchist, devoid of a moral compass or the barest trappings of a conscience. Batman blends high-octane fighter with an ethical imperative against using lethal force. His one main rule is that he won't kill, a point that comes up repeatedly in comics and movies. In The Dark Knight, Batman interrogates the Joker in a holding cell. Heath Ledger as Joker says to Christian Bale as Batman, "You have these rules, and you think they'll save you. The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight, you're going to break your one rule." But what happens when none of the normal rules apply? What about dealing with someone who doesn't respond using a normal frame of reference? Who doesn't feel discomfort or intimidation? Who doesn't have a flight response? Who simply doesn't care? What about dealing with the ultimate anarchist, the Joker? So why is Joker so difficult to beat anyway? Batman's approach to crime fighting reflects a force response options continuum in law enforcement. An officer will increase the level of force needed depending upon the level of threat. The officer always uses a one-over approach. In real law enforcement, lethal force is a legitimate and necessary option moving up the continuum. Real-life law enforcement officers must always be one level higher on the continuum than the bad guys in order to act safely. They must not fight hand-to-hand unless the situation forces them to. Law enforcement officials must use instead a baton or taser against empty hand, a gun versus a knife, and so on up. Law enforcement officers must expect to be able to finish their shifts safely and return home. Batman, on the other hand, has chosen to care less about his personal safety. In order to defeat them, while avoiding killing, Batman uses his opponents' bodies against them to evoke protective reactions. Nociceptors describes sensory receptors detecting tissue damage, real or imminent, and evoke very powerful defensive responses from the nervous system. If you ever accidentally touched a hot stove, you will remember the rapid hand pullback you had. Usually, these signals arrive at the brain, where they are intercepted as pain. Martial artists like Batman uses those defensive responses to manipulate his opponents. He hurts rather than harms and uses human physiology against his opponents. Applying a use of force continuum work requires extreme skill, poise, and confidence in the good guys, but also requires an intact and normally functioning nervous system in those on the other side of the law. Scenarios like extreme emotional state and drugs, like cocaine and methamphetamines, significantly alter the perception of pain. Safely implementing force response options becomes very difficult. Bodies that can't feel pain can't be made compliant by hurt without harm. This raises the question, maybe Joker can't actually feel any pain? A case of congenital general pure analgesia was the name of the 1932 paper that George Van Ness Dearborn published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disorders. The subject of this reasonably obscure paper was a 54-year-old man who could not recall any bodily pain ever occurring for his entire life. This rare medical condition is the inherited medical syndrome typically caused congenital insensitivity to pain. People with this condition are unable to sense those nociceptive signals warning of tissue damage about to happen. The neurons that bring nociceptive signals to the spinal cord and up to the brain are working, but the processing of these signals into a perception of pain with associated reactions isn't happening in a normal way. This would be a huge benefit for Joker to have and likely plays into how he can resist Batman so well. In the real world though, people without the ability to sense pain are in very real danger because pain is protective. Dangerous outcomes can occur if we don't have pain to help regulate, guide, and sculpt what we do. Of course, back in Gotham and Batman's fictional reality, the Joker doesn't care. He's lived like this for 80 years and he'll be at it still 80 years from now. Why would anyone choose not to eliminate a mass murderer for good? Why doesn't Batman kill the Joker? In the book Batman and Philosophy, Dark Night of the Soul, Mark White wrote an outstanding chapter applying different philosophical perspectives to generate reasons why Batman should and reasons why Batman should not end that killer clown. Throughout the movies and comic books, the green-haired agent of chaos takes many lives that could be spared through his elimination. But even if he ought to be removed, should an unlicensed vigilante dressed like a bat be the one to take him out? What are the psychological reasons why Batman does not kill the Joker? Despite the fiction's fantastic nature, it is a question with real-world concerns. Why do some people oppose the death penalty no matter what? Why do some people refuse to kill despite other violent actions they might take? But he's already operating outside the law, assaulting people, contaminating crime scenes, not testifying. He is a vigilante. Still, a vigilante criminal puncher is a different beast from a self-appointed executioner. He wants to show others that people can stand up to evil no matter how corrupt the system might be. He believes people can become better no matter how bad those people might be. He believes in redemption even if he is skeptical when some claim to turn a new leaf. Another way to look at it, if Batman killed the Joker, the gratification that comes with defeating him repeatedly would stop. Killing him would also be a final act in his own story. No restorative action could follow. Also, why would he stop his strongest opponent when that kind of defeat shows the measure of his own power? Police don't shine a Punisher signal in the night in the Marvel comics. I always saw it like this. Joker and Bruce are similar. People that are far past anything normal. They both enjoy the challenge of outdoing one another. The Joker is the ultimate grandstander. Batman draws me in because his world is that of insanity, sanity, coping mechanisms, and mental anguish. No other superhero story revolves around those psychological aspects so strongly and so often. But he's a highly functioning, insane person. So high, it's superhuman. Maybe it's just me, but why we relate to Batman? Batman's moral inconsistency may be another reason he seems so familiar to us. There is one mystery that the world's greatest detective has never been able to solve: his own moral inconsistency. Many focus on his all-too-human motivation and lack of superpowers to explain why he's more relatable than other superheroes. But most of us also share his struggle to reconcile the various elements of his moral code, which serves to make him a different sort of role model from most of his costume colleagues as well. Let's start with Batman's mission, the guiding principle of his life sworn over his parents' graves to save the lives of the people of Gotham, chiefly by fighting the source of crime. This is broadly consequentialist in his ethics, striving to do as much good as he can, both as the costume crime fighter Batman and as wealthy philanthropist Bruce Wayne. At the same time, he breaks many common sense moral rules in the process. He practices violence, often to the point of inflicting torture, and generally ignores the law when it is inconvenient, all of which would fly in the face of deontological ethics, which focuses on the right and wrong of actions rather than their consequences. None of these actions, however, is the cause of his moral distress or inconsistency, because Batman justifies them all by how they help him further his mission. To him, the end does justify the means in such cases, which may be disagreeable to some, especially deontologists. But it is not morally inconsistent with Batman's consequentialist mindset. If he believes that beating a reluctant informant senseless will help him save an innocent life, then he will do it, and he does it a lot. For Batman, this reasoning justifies a lot of behavior that many others feel is wrong, but even the Caped Crusader draws the line at one wrongful act: killing. Countless times in the comics, Batman has refused to kill even his most homicidal foes, including the Joker, and even risks his own life to save theirs. This is the central moral conflict in Batman's life. He refuses to perform the one wrongful act that would most significantly advance his mission and further his idea of the good. Here, his deontological convictions about means, perhaps his only one, run into his underlying consequentialist ends. What accounts for his refusal to kill? Most of Batman's explanations in the comics focus on the effects that killing would have on his moral character. For example, he worries that crossing that particular line will make him like the people he fights. This concern is a key feature of virtue ethics, yet another school of moral philosophy, but Batman's skewed version of it reflects an obsession with maintaining a virtuous self-image at the expense of the mission he has adopted as his version of the good life. And in the end, it furthers neither. We could debate whether or not Batman should kill the Joker or his other murderous enemies. Comic fans have been doing this since a long time. More important, however, Batman has long been debating this as well, both to himself and with his friends and fellow heroes, making much the same arguments I outlined above. He is keenly aware of this essential moral conflict, which is much harder to dismiss than using violence or breaking the law to further his mission. In this case, Batman has to explain what makes his concern with his virtue more important than his mission, or what makes the life he would take more important than the lives his foes would take. Batman's ongoing struggles with his moral inconsistency provide us with a point of reference to consider our own. Most of us have a concept of the good we want to further, whether it's saving lives as first responders, curing disease as medical researchers, or pursuing justice as policymakers or activists. At the same time, we all have moral lines we refuse to cross, such as those at the borders of lying, cheating, or stealing, and we also have ideas of who we want to be as people that includes but also supersedes all of these considerations. All of this moral material is difficult, if not impossible to reconcile and make consistent, especially when we have to marshal it in the face of hard choices. As many philosophers acknowledge, the faculty of judgment is necessary to combine, prioritize, and balance all of these moral criteria to make an actual decision. Philosophy professors teach the basic elements of ethics to students, but as Immanuel Kant wrote in the Critique of Pure Reason, judgment is a peculiar talent which can be practiced only and cannot be taught. Judgment is developed through experience over time and many mistakes, and it is also learned through example and not necessarily by those who exercise it well. It is more important to see the process of judgment than its results, and fiction can be just as valuable to this end as the stories of real people if the characters portrayed in it are sufficiently complex. Batman is indeed complex. Over his 80 years, he has developed into a fascinating character with a multifaceted ethics, and because of this, he can not only entertain us but also inspire us. His struggle to reconcile his conflicted moral code, likely as impossible a task as eradicating crime in Gotham City, is yet one more reason he is considered so relatable to millions of fans around the world. I suggest each one of us has a little bit of Batman inside of us. It's up to us to find that bit and put it to use. Putting it to use is often easier said than done, of course. People learn when and how to aggress, as well as against whom, through social learning. Viewing violence breeds a modest increase in aggressive behavior, especially in people who are provoked, and desensitizes viewers to aggression and alters their perceptions of reality. Observing aggressive behavior heightens aggressiveness in complicated ways. Children are more likely to mimic violence that gets rewarded and goes unpunished, but sympathizing with the victims, seeing their pain and suffering, makes that violence aversive to those capable of empathy. Bruce's first, best role models were his altruistic parents. Empirical evidence is clear. Pro-social models promote pro-social behavior. Adults and children mimic many actions they observe, with long-lasting effects visible in children absorbing information and experience at a greater rate than adults. Parents who both preach and practice altruism raise children who become more altruistic adults. Adults modeling of pro-social behavior can show powerful and enduring repercussions on their children's altruistic inclinations. Batman matters by showing us our own potential. We can raise the bar on our own limitations. We just need to find that bit of Batman within and have the will to put it to good use. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you liked it. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will enjoy my other video essays. My name is and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.